Hello and welcome back to another episode. I raise my Lego mug, one of my favourite Christmas presents, in honour of the closure of one of my favourite local stores. Now I say local, I actually heard about this in a local newspaper, but based where I used to live. So it's a local newspaper in New York. And it's the closure of a shop which I treasured so much. Actually, as a child, it was a slightly mythical place as a child, but I'll come to that in a moment. But also, when I lived and worked in York, it became a staple, an everyday staple of my gaming and banter and time off life. So this shop, Bulmers, was desperately important to me, and it's a shame to see it closing down. It was a family-run business which dealt in second-hand games, for example, instruments. Everything from guitars to drums to also electronics, things like video VCRs and cameras, and it was that kind of place. But it was run in the right way. It wasn't an intimidating place to visit. The people behind the counter weren't overly eager for you to always make a purchase. The feeling was good. The feels were good with Bulmers. And it's such a shame to hear that this place is closed down. Now, before I go into this in a little bit more detail, I'd like to say this is not the new format for Soup's Eye View. Don't worry. I've got this new toy where the camera can clamp to the desk, and this actually work from home. So it's really quite funky to be able to sort of do this sort of run and gun kind of video from my work desk. But for the most part, Soup's Eye View videos will be happening on the set as you are accustomed to. But I really had to talk today a little bit about Bulmers because, like I said, I had just read the story now, and I'm like, oh, it's just gutting. I'm so gutted to hear this place is closing down. My first interaction with this store was actually in my early teens. I talked about this when I talked about my Mega Drive collection. It was this sort of complete mistake. Actually, I was there. We went on this trip to York, me and some friends and colleagues. I guess like a school trip, and I just was wandering the city. I had some money to spend, some expenses money, and I found myself on the edge of the inner city area. York is surrounded by this medieval wall, and just outside the gatehouse on Goodrum Gate is where Bulmers was, just on the corner there. And somehow I found myself there. I think I was drawn by, there was a model, well, hopefully there still is a model shop just up the road from it, just inside the city from the gatehouse. I was like, oh, look at the models, so that's quite cool. And just beyond the gatehouse, there was this shop up the corner. And I was drawn there, and I saw in the window Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and I was enthralled by this. My brother and I at the time were playing an awful lot of our Mega Drive. This was just before we got our N64. And the opportunity to be able to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the promise indeed of a two-player game was superb. So I used a good chunk of my expenses money on a game for the Mega Drive, which I sort of didn't tell my mum at the time. Well, not properly anyway. I didn't tell her how much it actually cost me, but that was actually my first interaction with Bulmers. It was when I was 12 or 13 or something, and it was good. It was a sort of mythical place. I wasn't really aware of the layout of York. York isn't a very big city. It's a fairly small city. It's more or less within the bounds of the old Roman town. So it's a fairly small inner city area. But when you're that old and when you're from the countryside in North Wales, it seems like this massive metropolitan area, And so it's kind of mythical. I should have said to my brother, "Yeah, I found this shop. I don't think I'd be able to. Don't think I'd be able to find my way back there again." But that's kind of where Bulmers was. It was a bit of a myth to my brother and I. Now, my brother ended up going to university in York, and he very quickly found Bulmers. And after I'd gone to university in Durham, I actually got a job with the York Archaeological Trust in York, living and working 3, maybe 4 corners away from Bulmers, the store. So very quickly, Bulmers became a sort of a after work and also weekend kind of mainstay for me. I'd go there and I'd have really great conversations with the people behind the counter. I'd rifle through their Wii games, their Xbox games, their SNES games, their Game Boy Color games, all this kind of thing, and they'd always give very reasonable prices. I won't say that they were cheap; they weren't cheap, but very reasonable prices. And also, occasionally they'd give you some good bundle deals as well. I got my favourite electric guitar from that store. Or one of my favourites at least. I got a practice drum kit from that store. So Bulmers became a really important part of my life when I was living in York. And even actually since then, I've moved away, and whenever I went back to York, last time I was in York, I popped into Bulmers and I got Thunderbirds for the Game Boy Color, which is an interesting game. I'm going to have to try and find the manual to it because I'm not quite sure how to play it. But Thunderbirds and something else for the Game Boy Advance, I think, on that particular day. My wife was with me, and this was actually the first time that she had been to Bulmers. And I was telling her, the story of how I first discovered Bulmers and how I was destined to come back again. And the guys behind the counter seemed to find this quite funny. But the point is that Bulmers continued to be important to me. Initially it was this sort of mystical Aladdin's cave, which I may never be able to return to again. But then it became something of a really important place, and it was actually quite literally on the way to and from the supermarket where I get my food from when I was living in the flat in York. It was a converted warehouse. That sounds really fancy, but it's not. It was literally a room in a converted warehouse that I was living in. But Sainsbury's was just around the corner, and so I'd have to go through this medieval gatehouse to get there. And on the way back, I'd usually spend whatever I hadn't spent on money in Bulmers on a brand new retro game. So it's important to me, and it's such a shame. Such a shame to hear the place is closing down. 57 years apparently. This shop has been there in York, and sadly it's closed very, very recently. So I just thought I'd take a moment just to talk about my memories of Bulmers and how much I love that place. How, like in particular, I remember one time they were so fed up of getting shovelware for the Wii. The guy behind the counter said, might have been the son of the guy who owns the place. I'm not sure, but he seemed really, he was always there. The guy behind the counter said, look, if you want to buy all the Wii games for, say, £100, and we're talking about hundreds of Wii games, so it'd be really less than £5 a game, If you want to buy them all, you can. Just get them the fuck out of my shop. And I was like, and the thing is, I just didn't have the money, I didn't have the cash, and it would have been interesting to go through their stock, and see what I got a great deal on. But I just didn't have the cash. And actually, this actually reminds me of something. Actually, this is another thing. Actually, it just popped in my head. Bulmers was instrumental in me building up my DVD collection. And I say that because just soon I moved to York at a time when I didn't have much money. I was between jobs, post-university, and it became clear that I had to sell off my DVDs. I'd amassed a huge collection from working in Blockbuster between high school and university, hundreds of titles, and I sold them off in order to be able to pay the rent. And Bulmers actually bit by bit allowed me, because of their great prices, to actually build up some of my collection. I sort of had to repurchase. I didn't sell off, the classics like Terminator 2, but I had to repurchase things like box sets, so things like the Aliens quadrilogy, this kind of thing. So I really can't overstate just how important Bulmers has been to me over the years, and just how gutted I am that this place is closing down. It's going to be so weird going back to York. Like next week we're going back, and not being able to pop in and have a chat with the guys, or maybe pick up a computer game. It's a genuine shame, and I'm going to miss the place immensely. And so it was worthwhile recording just how much I love Bulmers and sharing it with you guys, because I'm sure you all know this type of store. Maybe one is still open near you, and if so, treasure it. Go and support it. But I think more often than not, we've seen these sort of places come and go, and this was one of those really cool places to go and pick up a bit of a bargain and have a bit of a laugh. at the weekend or on the way home from work. It was a superb place, and I suppose here's to you, Bulmers. Cheers. Anyway, guys, as ever, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.